Hold that tiger. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm your host, Blake Ruffino. This is Are You Serious Sports. I hope all of you are making it a good one. We know that we are as well. Huge morning show in store for you today as LSU has hired defensive coordinator from Missouri, also formerly LSU's linebacker coach in 2021, former Miami DC. Blake Baker is their next defensive coordinator, making him the highest paid assistant coach in the country, $2.5 million. Jordan fades back, swish, and that's the game, Your Honor. As the great Jim Carrey once said on the movie Liar, Liar, pants on fire. But nevertheless, this goes to show that everything that had been reported this year about what Scott Woodward and Brian Kelly would do was complete and utter horseshit. Sorry if you're listening around kids this morning. That will be the only curse word that I use. At least I will attend for that to be the only curse word that I use throughout the show. But lots and lots and lots to talk about with Blake Baker. What is the staff going to look like under him? Does he want to possibly bring somebody along with him? Was that a bargaining chip? I'll tell you what we knew. Basically, yesterday on my personal Twitter account, when I sent out the picture of my wife, myself and my wife, Megan, what am I saying to Blake Ruffino? That is when I was pretty confident around 10:36 yesterday morning that this deal was going to be done. But we got lots to talk about. How good was Blake Baker these last 2 years of Missouri? What do I think? How do I like the fit? Quite honestly, I don't like it, guys. I don't like the fit whatsoever. I love the fit because I think that Blake Baker does the three things that we talked about on Thursday's show. Number one, he's going to recruit. Like 1,000% going to recruit. And quite honestly, out of the last 3 or 4 defensive coordinators that you've had on campus here, number 1 in Dave Aranda, number 2, Bo Pelini, number 3, Durante Jones, and number 4, Matt House, neither one of those, okay, in my personal opinion, were good enough recruiters, okay, to make a massive impact for their programs, or this program, I should say. Number 2, I think he's highly aggressive and knows exactly how to coach the defense that he wants to run. Love it. And then number 3, he's going to be highly aggressive. Ask Jaden Daniels just how aggressive he's going to be. Now, LSU did beat Missouri this year, mainly due to and being on the back of, but being on the back of Jaden Daniels, the Heisman Trophy winner. We'll discuss all about that. But there's other things that we need to discuss. Number 1, how do I think some other staff members shake out? Number 2, Bryce Underwood, the number 1 player in the country at 2025, commits today. We'll touch on that. I'm assuming a lot of you want to know about Logan Diggs. Why did he hit the portal? Where do I think he's going? Talk to a very, very, very close source to Logan Diggs. We'll touch on that. Do I think LSU goes after another running back? I think that there's a potential that they could, and what LSU could potentially be doing in the transfer portal. And by the way, because I'm assuming this question will come up. Just before we get to staff, yes, we'll touch on Bo Davis because there's a report out there from a Texas site. I don't know the gentleman who posted it. I'll just tell you what I knew as of yesterday. As of this morning, I have not made a phone call on Bo Davis. What I will say is this. It got leaked out yesterday that I knew that Bo Davis's son was at Southeastern Louisiana as a defensive lineman. They did not want that to be brought up. It should not have been brought up, and it's not bad reporting. It's just there are things in this business that you do and don't do that when you're requested not to do something, you don't do it, but people do it anyway to make themselves look better. But nevertheless, we will talk on Bo Davis as well. And I've told you, I do not believe at the current moment that I don't know if it would be beneficial for Bo Davis, as Texas is a really good job for defensive line, and they will give him the money that he needs to succeed there. If he does come back, I do think it is because he's wanting to be home. Yes, you can send in the super chats. You want your comment read, you can fire it inside of the YouTube channel. Get us the super chat. That is 100% the way that if you want your comment read, we will get to it. But Carter, the Power Brian, he was live last night. We were at a wedding last night. So let me hold on before I get to Carter's comment. Let me mention this too. Last night we were at a wedding, my wife and I, Megan, and my phone in the ceremony continued to go off, and I could not answer the phone. This was probably around, I don't know. I mean, it's got to be around 7:30. And I didn't answer it. So then when the ceremony's over, about 8:00, I, answered the phone, and they were like, we're pretty sure it's done. So a very wild day yesterday. I tried to send out as many hints as I could, but glad that we were able to get that out there. And I'm happy, man. I mean, I'm really happy. Carter, the Power Bryant, our good buddy, joins us every Monday. Won't be with us this Monday because of the national championship game. He'll be joining us on Tuesday. Says AYS to the MFing moon. Good to have my good buddy in here as well. Good to have you in here with us, Carter. Robert Law says, ask Blake, what is your opinion on Corey Raymond and Bo Davis? We'll get to that throughout the show. I'm not going to, we'll get to that. Blaze asks, what time does Bryce Underwood commit? Bryce Underwood will be committing at 4:30 Central Standard Time. I put my pick in. If you want to know what my pick is, go to our website, ayssnetwork.com/forum. I've had it in there since, I think, 7 weeks ago is when I made my pick on him. And you got, or maybe 6 weeks ago, you guys should, if you're a really diehard LSU fan, you knew what happened 6 weeks ago. Jared Slag says, you called it, Blake. Well, we've been putting a lot of Blake Baker content out there, so I'm glad it did work because we would, it would not have been good. Carter says, y'all hit the like button. See you on Monday, LSU building the monster. We'll see you on Tuesday. Remember, Carter, we got the national title. Jamie says, Blake, you missed out. Carter had almost 1K in the show last night. I bet so. I bet so. I was at a wedding. Couldn't go live. We didn't get home until 12 o'clock or 11:30, whatever it was. Excuse me. Unprofessional to sneeze on air. Unprofessional to sneeze on air. But we'll get to all that. So I wouldn't mind 1K in the show either. I would not mind 1K in the show either. So with that being said, everybody do us a favor by hitting the like and share. Share to all those social media groups. Share to all of those social media pages wherever you're listening, watching. Like, subscribe, notification bell. Wherever you listen to podcasts, rate, review, and subscribe. Let's talk about the hire of Blake Baker. We do that next. Let's talk about our good friends over at betonline.ag, our good friend Tyler Alexander over at LPT Realty. Do us a favor. All I ask from you during the entire show, the only thing I ask is that you hit that like button, you hit the share button, you send in comments. If you want your comments read, it's easier for us. You send in a super chat because we're able to keep up with those. Like, subscribe, share, all that good stuff. We're back in just a minute. Blake Baker, the next DC. What does it mean for LSU? Who is he bringing along with him? If anybody, who is the staff going to be on defense? And by the way, we still have an offensive coordinator that needs to be technically hired. We talk about all of that next. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way for you to wager on all of your favorite sports, contests, events,
with the first-to-market odds and lines. Find reviews for all the news for each league, including Major League Baseball, NFL, NBA, NHL, combat sports, college sports, esports, and even golf. BetOnline continues to be the top online resource for all of your sports information for live in-game betting, props, and futures. Head on over to BetOnline today and use your mobile device to join and make your first sports bet. Use our promo code BELIEVE50, that's BELIEVE50, BLEAV 50, to receive your 50% off welcome bonus on your first deposit. That's betonline.ag, betonline.ag.
He will sell your house and find you a new. Well, Tyler's the man, he's here for you. If you want to buy or sell, well, it's not too late. Dial 955-0008. Just call 955-0008. Y'all call Tyler, he'll shoot you straight.
We're back. All right, let's get to it. We don't really have a lot of time to waste. One comment, though, from our good buddy over the Drake Williams Law Firm, drakewilliamslawfirm.com. Ryan Williams is looking forward to the revamp of the LSU defense, bring back the standard. Very much so. Very much so. That's actually what we're leading off the show with here today. Listen, for far too long, it is of my opinion that LSU defensively had not been living up to the standard that they have set over the last 2 decades. Guys, this past week, 20 years ago, you won a national title. Now, I know that Nick Saban was your head coach in 2003, but regardless of who the head coach was, since that time, over those 20 plus years, you had let it be known that, look, man, when you play LSU, you're going to play a fast, physical, determined, swagged out defense. And over the last couple of years, and last year was a lot better. I'm not going to take that away from LSU, Brian Kelly, or Matt House. The standard has not been set from LSU defensively. You have been, and your culture has been, somewhat of a really dominant offensive team. Run-centric at times until Jaden Daniels just started throwing the ball all over the place, like we told you in the preseason that we thought that he would do. Bringing back a guy like Blake Baker sets you on a path, the path, as Brian Kelly would say, to what I believe gets you back to the relevance of what you've been known for defensively for over the last 2 decades. I love Blake Baker. I mean, we've been talking about it all week. I think that he brings a schematic style, an aggressive style that lives and breathes here. You know, I think there's something to be said as soon as it was announced that you had a lot of players at Missouri talking about how much they loved him versus when a guy got fired in Matt House, how much they didn't really care for him as much. He can reach players. He can coach a really good defense. He can build a really good defense. You know, there was a video leaked. Not leaked. I mean, Jacques Doucet from WAFB posted up there. We retweeted or tweeted it. Okay, or X'd it. I don't get the dynamic of Twitter anymore. But of Blake Baker and Scott Woodward embracing one another when LSU played Missouri and Como this past year, both giving each other big hugs and talking about old times. It is aligned to here. I will say this, because a lot of you that are either married or have been married will know exactly what I'm talking about. Your wives are normally undefeated. And it fits perfectly because you have a guy that last year alone, guys, let me set this up too. In the beginning of the year on my national show, Ruffino and Joe, I came out and said we were doing predictions. I came out and said that I am picking Missouri to finish second in the SEC East this year because of how they are built defensively. In the beginning of the preseason, and when we were talking about all this, got ridiculed by Tennessee fans, by the Rudy Pook South Carolina fans. I say Rudy Pook, but they came at me the most. By Florida fans of all people. Billy Napier, how's it going? The way in 2 years that Blake Baker built them defensively was the reason that I picked them. Now, did they have guys like Luther Burden and Cody Schrafer and all those dudes offensively? Did they have a pretty decent offensive line? Yes. That's not what set Missouri apart and them being the number 2 team in the East. It was what they did defensively. Guys, this past year alone, Missouri was 28th in the country in total defense. They were 25th in the country in scoring defense. Let me stop right there. Let me just stop right there. It's not as if Mizzou didn't play good teams. It's not like Mizzou didn't play good offenses. You take that LSU game out from Mizzou, guys, they're a top 10 or they're a top 15 defense. Jaden Daniels is the reason that they're sitting at the mid 25 range of total defense. Before Blake Baker got to Missouri, they were in the hundreds. Does that sound a little bit familiar to you? A team that had been struggling defensively in the SEC, who was in the hundreds in total defense, all of a sudden, here they are. And Blake Baker is emerging, and he's coming back to LSU. Now, you may remember Blake Baker back in 2021, okay, and the things that he did for guys like Damone Clark and Micah Baskerville. Damone Clark being the poster child for that in 2021 from the year that he had in 2020 and the revamp that he had in 21 and how great he played. I just think that you hit a home run here. I do. And I don't like – I never really like using that verbiage. I don't like saying there are home run hires until after the fact. There's only a couple of guys that you can hire that I think are home runs. But for me, and I will, you know, if Blake Baker falls flat on his face, I will be the first one here to say, hey, man, I was wrong. I don't think I'm going to do that. I think he comes back to a place that quite honestly needs him, that desperately needs him, and not so much on the field as it is off. What do I mean? Guys, you have a very fractured culture on defense. Very fractured. It's not good. It wasn't good. Matt House had led a defensive staff. He had led a defense that, quite honestly, he cannot get to them just as from a personal level. A lot of this game is not about what you call schematically at times versus being able to reach a player and get the best ability out of them. I mean, that's what coaching is. Because when you play man on man and you call a defense and you're running specific schematics, missing tackles sometimes doesn't really become a problem anymore because you have a guy who's built a culture of success. Now, what Miami fans will tell you is that when he was the defensive coordinator at Miami, that he wasn't any good. Well, that has a lot to do with Miami and Manny Diaz because they just weren't really good. Look what's going on with them right now. They keep paying for kids in NIL with NIL money, getting massive amounts of talent, and they still suck. But then Blake Baker goes to LSU and revamps the linebacking room. He goes to Missouri and calling defenses, coaching safeties. Guys, arguably not the two names that you would ever hear from safety play that was good. Guys, they legitimately were the most underrated unit on their team defensively. The way that they played. Choking out Tennessee. No pause. They choked out teams like Tennessee. Quite honestly, if they could get a little bit more offense, they beat Georgia at home. Blake Baker, legitimately the last 2 years against one time the national title winner and arguably one of the top 4 teams in this year in Georgia, he choked out Georgia. You're not going to see more physical teams than that. Better coached teams than that. And he choked them out. You know, I went and listened to Kirby Smart's press conference this morning of when Georgia played Missouri. And the first thing he said was, and I'm quoting, I'm paraphrasing, but somewhat quoting, defensively, they choked us out. I'm literally using his words. You have a guy who revamped a defensive front 7 to the top 30 in the country. Guys, if you have a top 30 rush defense in the SEC, you're going to win the game. You're going to make the playoffs. Now, the question that I've been getting from a lot of you is pretty simple. Because yesterday, our good buddy, Wilson Alexander from The Advocate, reported, and is correct, that LSU made Blake Baker the highest paid assistant in the country, 3 years, $2.5 million. Let me start off with this very quickly. I know I mentioned it in the beginning, but I would be remiss not to bring it up here again. It had been reported throughout the season, these 3 things, that number 1, LSU did not have the money to buy out Matt House. That LSU did not have the money to go and pay buyouts for coordinators like Blake Baker, and that LSU was struggling raising funds. Those 3 things we told you all year long were BS. Were BS. They've always been BS. On Tuesday, I came out in this show and told you, what is the only thing that we have seen from a guy like Scott Woodward? What is the only thing, if there's one thing that we know about Scott Woodward, you may not, the LSU athletic director, you may not know anything about Scott Woodward. You may not know where he gets his haircut. You might not know his favorite things. You might not know his likes or dislikes. Hell, might not even know what he sounds like completely. But there's one thing that you always will know. Always. Money is not going to be a problem under a Scott Woodward tenure. Ever. Now, do they need to fix some things in NIL? I think that they need to fix organizational things. I do not think they need to fix the money that individuals and boosters are giving. Clearly. I don't think that. I think that they're going to fix those. I think they're going to bring in somebody who can overnight and instantly fix it. We'll talk about that when it happens. Okay? But I do think that will be fixed. But one thing that was never the truth, ever the truth, is that Scott Woodward would not go out there and buy out a contract at Mizzou to get a dude that they want. Number 2. And the question that I have been fielding since 8:30 last night has been one, if only one. Is Blake Baker worth $2.5 million a year? Here's what I'll tell you. This is opinion. This is not fact yet, but this is opinion. not sourcing. If you do promote and take the interim tag off of a guy like Joe Sloan, you're not paying $2.3 million to keep a guy like Mike Denbrock. Now, let me stop on Mike Denbrock. I thought I heard Notre Dame fans and LSU media report that LSU refused to match Mike Denbrock's contract. What lies and truths are you going to believe now? Do you really believe that that's true? Seeing everything that you've seen, do you believe that that's true? Guys, this sport sourcing, it's not that hard. It really isn't. Finding out the realistic nature of how things have happened is not that hard. You really think that they wouldn't match Mike Denbrock's contract? Get over yourself. But back to the point of Joe Sloan and Cortez Hankton. Let's make the argument that they're promoting and the interim tag is taken off. You're saving money on not going and having to pay a buyout for another OC. Actually, the truth is you're getting a little money from Notre Dame on a Mike Denbrock buyout. Okay? But nevertheless, you're not having to spend the money there like I think you would have to go get a new OC. Now, that doesn't really change the fact of you having to go pay out and buy out Blake Baker. That doesn't change the fact, okay, that you made him the highest paid assistant in the country. Here's one thing I do know. LSU is going to make over $60 million next year in TV revenue money. 60. Guys, $2.5 million a year isn't anything for a program like LSU. Quite honestly, you're not paying it. And if it fixes a defense, and if it makes a defense get you to a playoff, and if it fixes having guys like Garrett Nussmeier who can put up points, guys, there's a potential that you get a commitment today from Bryce Underwood, the number one player in the country at quarterback, the most dynamic player in 2025. There is a potential that you get him today. There is no money that you cannot spend. It is a relative thing. Are you going to lose a dude who revamped a defense that was one of the worst in not only the SEC, but the entire country? Are you going to let $500,000 not sway you to getting him here? At that point, then yes, you know what that sounds like? Let me tell you what that sounds like. It sounds a lot like some shit that Joe Oliva would do. You cannot be scared to go out there and pay what you need to pay. Brian Kelly is making $8 million more a year than what you're roughly, a little bit less, but roughly than what a Blake Baker would make. Come on. Saban is making $13 to $14 million more than his coordinators. What are we talking about here? So what, you made him the highest paid? When you brought in Nick Saban all those years ago in 2000, LSU was ridiculed for paying a guy $1 million a year who hadn't done anything worth a damn at Michigan State. Hadn't done a Rudy, because Nick Saban was a 4 eyeglasses wearing, having ass, short little man who couldn't win in the Big Ten. He couldn't win. And you paid him $1 million to come here. Money is money, man. So what? If you identify, you know what I love about this more than anything? Brian Kelly and Scott Woodward identified the guy that they want. And they did not take no for an answer. To be honest with you, I think it's more of a positive than anything. Why negativity comes out in that is unreal to me, mainly due to the point of you're LSU. We do what we want. We do what we want. If you identified a guy and couple $100,000 swayed you in getting him, as Ross from Friends would say, now you on the podcast didn't see that, but if you are a Friends watcher or you were a Friends watcher, you know exactly the move I just made. You don't even have to. I'm sure you can visualize it. To the main point, I think that Blake Baker, is going to revamp what you do defensively. What kind of scheme does he run? I mean, just go back. Well, let me backtrack because the LSU game is going to be a little bit different because of Jaden Daniels. They did not run the base stuff that they were known for running, but they are going to be highly aggressive. Guys, against teams like Georgia, Tennessee, Kansas State, they will send the house at you, pun intended. Blake Baker is not scared to get in your face and punch you in the mouth. Now, there comes a part of this that the first question that I asked myself, how does this overnight change a dude like Harold Perkins? How does this change a dude like Perk 40 or Perk 4 now? I don't think that Blake Baker is going to want to put him out in coverage like House did. I think more times than not, he's going to want his dude, the guy that quite honestly was the only let me tell y'all something. Let me tell y'all a quick story. Here's a quick story for you. When Ed Orgeron got fired after the Florida game, I told a colleague of mine, that means Park's done. Park's out. Unless Woodward knocks it out of the park, because I would assume that Blake Baker is fired. With that being said, Blake Baker continued religiously going out there and recruiting his ass off for LSU. You would wind up hearing from guys like Perk later on, even after he committed, like, hey, man, Coach Baker was the reason that I continued to have LSU in here because he constantly kept recruiting me. Overnight and with a stroke of a pen, you literally change your entire culture. How much is culture worth? How much is, and I'm sure a lot of you follow things on social media. How much is social media worth to you? Or how much worth is social media to you? How much worth is culture to you? For Blake Baker's sake, he could come to LSU, revamp this defense, and he's on a fast track. He could be Dave Aranda on a fast track to getting a P5 head coaching job. That's why you come here. It's 1,000% the reason that you come here. I will nip this one in the bud as we close this part of our segment out, because this has to pertain to Brian Kelly. And the second question that I'd been fielding, probably more than anything, and it mainly revolved around Corey Raymond more than Blake Baker, but then it started to come back when the Blake Baker news continued to pick up. Why, if you're Brian Kelly, why would you fire a guy and then bring him back? Well, number one, Blake Baker was not a DC at that time. He was a part of a team that was 6-6, and the culture had completely just fallen by the wayside, and he didn't know him. The last time that Blake Baker was a DC, he was at Miami, where he fell, I'm going to be honest, fell flat on his face because of a head coach who mainly ran a defense that made Blake Baker look bad. I think that it says multiple things about Brian Kelly in a hiring of Blake Baker, and potentially what we'll talk about with staff in a moment, with potentially, not saying it's happening, but potentially, even if you brought in a guy like Corey Raymond, listen, I made a mistake. Let's bring these guys back. And let me tell you my instant thought of that. Now, my instant thought is, from a national perspective, there could be a little egg on Brian Kelly's face for firing two guys and then bringing him back. But what I really think is, from what's the reality of that? Like, what's the actual truth? LOVE love the fact that Brian Kelly, regardless of what social media would ever say, is not going to be affected by if he made a mistake or potentially made a mistake on bringing a guy back to make LSU better. You have had coaches in the past, two of them that won national titles. And Les Miles, who we'll talk about here today because we have to at the end of the show because of the Sharon Lewis case that got dismissed, and Ed Orgeron, that would not let their ego go enough to do or pull off moves like this. Brian Kelly comes in here and says, I will do what I have to do to win. See, what's been lost in all of this through this season, because you get Rudy Poos out there from Rudy Poo Tech with a degree in their office on the wall from Rudy Poo State that says, Brian Kelly's going to Michigan. He doesn't want to be here. And then you get rumors. Oh, well, he doesn't like it in Louisiana. Okay. There could be a potential truth to Brian Kelly going to Michigan. Could it happen? Okay. Not going to throw the baby out with the bathwater. Maybe a bad pun, but not going to completely dismiss that. What I will say is he's making a shitload of moves for a guy who potentially knows that he wants to leave here. Here's another thing. Remember the guy, Scott Wilbur, we talked about earlier? Scott does not go down without a fight. I love that Brian Kelly is doing things and putting things aside, because the ultimate thing that got lost in all of this, because the truth is probably the only thing that Brian Kelly wants in his life, the money, the fame, being in the SEC, all that shizite is really good. It's really cool. It's really awesome to be a head coach in the SEC. There's 15 other ones of them now that the season is coming to an end and Texas and Oklahoma is coming into the SEC. Because he wants to leave his own legacy. He is one of the best college coaches that has ever graced college football. You can't take that away from him. He's got more wins than almost anybody in the sport. Actively, technically, more than anybody in the sport. He wants to wrap his legacy around 1, 2, maybe even 3 national titles. Are there things that have to be cleaned up and fixed? You're not going to hear me disagree with you there. I'm not going to be the guy that disagrees that LSU purple and gold glasses on, everything's fixed, everything's fine. We got this, we got that. I'm going to tell you what I believe to be the truth. There are things that got to be fixed. 100% things that have to be fixed. because they're starting to fix them. The story is not written. The story is not over. Chapters are being written. But we're in the beginning stages of this book. We're not even close to being over with it. Okay. Now, I love it. Personally, I love it. Everybody do us a favor and hit the like and share. Share to all those social media groups if you're on Facebook. Share, 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 share. If you peel back the curtain, if you look at this from a realistic aspect, you know that everything that we said right here this morning is not, some of it is opinion, yes. You know deep down in your heart of hearts, regardless if you like me, you love me, you hate me, regardless of what it is, you know that everything we just mentioned is true. You know it. Don't listen to everything that you hear. There is, there's a lot of parts of me that was really aggravated by this search, by this season. And did it have to do with how bad you were on defense? Yeah, it did. Yeah, it did. I mean, to be honest with you, I told some of the guys that, help us produce. I told some of my colleagues that, like, man, it is very hard for me not to run out here every single night and say, fire Matt House's dumb ass. It was hard. Pause. But it was difficult. And then you got people out here saying, okay, well, it was because of the bowl game. Guys, shut up. Come on, dude. I'm not saying that I get everything right. I know that I don't. Every child under God is not perfect. But we have to, as a fan base, we have to, and I say fan base because regardless of what you believe every media member is, I guarantee you 99.7% of them are just fans just like you. So what that they have this job? It doesn't matter. They get pissed off and happy the same ways that you do. They might know a little bit more info than you. I might know a little bit more info than you. Doesn't change the fact that when you cut all of us open, we bleed purple and gold. Doesn't change that fact. All right. We'll get to some staff stuff in just a moment. Michael Morse with a $4.99 super chat says, makes a hire 4 days after he fires Matt House. Tell me he has been on his DC search for a hot minute with how BK typically operates. Well, and how Scott operates. And here's another thing too that I don't want to be dismissed. Okay? Something that I do not want to be dismissed. Brian Kelly signs off on this too. See, I see Scott Wilbur getting a lot of love on this, and he should. He 1,000% should. Because I don't know why I have to explain this. It kind of gives me a little bit of a migraine. If Brian Kelly goes to Scott Wilbur and says, man, that Blake Baker, man, shit. They're probably, BK's probably at his desk like he was at a episode of The Wire. Shit. Like Blake Baker shit. I mean, Brian Kelly can identify whatever coaches that he wants to come here. Scott in the athletic department, Brian Kelly doesn't work on the finances. He could give two Rudy poos about the finances and on how you get guys here. He identifies. He keeps Brian Kelly in the loop. That's how it works. Speaking of finances, Y'all know Brian Kelly gave $1 million of his own money to build a add-on to the LSU football operations building. Let me say that again. Let me say that again. So you mean to tell me that a guy that spent $1 million of his own money to build an addition onto the football ops is actively searching other places after he gave up $1 million of his own money? Well, Blake, he's making $9.5 million a year. Guys, $1 million is $1 million. What the hell are we talking about here? What are we talking about here? I love it. I love it. Okay, let's do this. I'll get to a few questions here. Fire in your questions out. You have a question, send the super chats. The easiest way to get it in there. If you have a question, let us know, and then we'll field some of them, and then we'll talk a little bit about staff. Aaron Miller says the first coach to do that. 100%. 100. If he does it, if he does leave, okay. Why have we lost faith so easily? I bet you your faith's going to get restored, and about, could your how much is your faith going to get restored in about 4 hours? Rudy Poos. Semper on YouTube says Blake loses $1 million in his couch cushions yearly. No, I do not. I wish I did. Let me tell you, I wish I did. I just want to let y'all know something. I wish that I did. I wish that I did. Okay, I'm trying to find some questions here. Boogie Season says, hashtag Ask Blake, do you think our defense plays with a whole new energy? 1,000%. 1,000%. And look, something that we didn't mention yet, I do wonder how much of a say that Blake Baker, y'all see my OCD? Y'all see my OCD? I do wonder how much of a say Blake Baker has in some of the assistant coaches that will be under him. I do know that Baker has a very good relationship with some of the coaches that were at Missouri. And I do think that some of them instantly with this move goes to the front of the list as potential candidates for defensive assistant replacements, right? Because when you have as much success as you did, now if you're just joining us, let me revamp what Blake Baker, Missouri did last year. 28th in total defense, 28th in total defense, 25th in scoring defense, 47th in passing defense. That's got to get better. You guys know how I feel about passing defense. You have a team in the national title in Washington who's 120th in passing yards allowed. Rushing defense, what I care about the most, they're 30th. I think all the peoples you start giving yourself all right, I'll just say it. I think Kevin Peoples, who coached the defensive line edge guys at Missouri, could make some sense here for a potential replacement. The reason that I say that is because I do think that there would be a chance that he would want to bring one, maybe two. Does Al Pogue make the corners coach at Missouri make any sense for him? I don't know that, because I still think that you have a guy like Corey Raymond that makes a lot of sense here, but nevertheless, it is an opportunity for some of these guys. If look, Blake Baker liked him a lot, then why not? So I do think that a guy like Kevin Peoples, who has a lot of experience along the defensive line and edge rush, does make some sense. Do they actively go there? Because at the end of the day, this is Brian Kelly's ship to run on the assistants. But we will see on that. Go Tiger says, where all that TAF money going? Well, where do you think it's going? I mean, guys, come on. Can this fan base for once do me a favor? Not all of you, majority of you. Can we be realistic about something for a minute? Do you honestly believe, again, you're worried about the money, and I guarantee you 80% of you do not give money to TAF. You don't give money to Bayou Traditions or whatever collective. You don't, and then you come out here and you bitch about the money. Oh, why are we spending all this money? You don't even give any money. Some of you Rudy Poos, go to the gas station, get your Zen pouches, and get your Marbello Reds or whatever the hell you call them, the cowboy killers, and you light them son of the bitches up, and you start asking yourself, what about the money? You just spent $7 for a damn pack of cigarettes. It's going to give you cancer. What about the money? Head ass. C. King, our good buddy. What's up, man? Says kids will react better to Baker. They didn't like House. 1,000%. 1,000%. Guys, you can tell it, right? Like, you could tell that they didn't like his ass. You could tell that they did not like Blake Baker. I mean, Matt House. Instantly. We got people quote tweeting us, players quote tweeting us when the news is announced. Basically going full 90s wrestling, Stone Cold Steve Austin. Oh, hell yeah. What? Got 4 more of them going full 90s rock, raising the eyebrow. If you smell. Oh, I mean, come on. All right. Let's do this. What was it? The Marlboro Red? Whatever you call them damn cigarettes. I don't smoke. All right. I got to do this. Let me get to a quick break. We're going to reset and do this. We're going to reset, and then we're going to talk about the potential staff that Blake Baker would have under him. What do I think they do at corner? Does Blake Baker coach safeties? Does Bob Diaco move to linebacker? Because I do think that there's a potential that Diaco moves to backer, and that Blake Baker, who coached safeties, he may stay there. Okay, we'll give our thoughts, opinions about all that in just a minute. But let's talk about our good friend Carol Falls over at State Farm. Our good friends over the Drake Williams Law Firm, drakewilliamslawfirm.com. Let's reset. We talk about the staff. Oh, and by the way, Sharon Lewis and her Rudy Poo ass has to pay the lawsuit money for the Les Miles stuff. We'll talk about that to round it out. Don't go anywhere. We're back next.
Guys, you might know my good friend Carol Falls and all the great service that he provides over at State Farm. He is your good neighbor after all. But did you know State Farm has surprisingly great rates as well? Along with the great neighbor service, State Farm agent Carol Falls has surprisingly great rates for everyone inside the state of Louisiana. So call him today at 985-395-4300, 985-395-4300 for all of those surprisingly great rates on auto, home, and life insurance needs. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there, and individual premiums will vary by customer. All applicants subject to the State Farm underwriting requirements.
By the Drake Williams Law Firm, drakewilliamslawfirm.com. Whether you've been injured in an accident, you're preparing for a future with your estate planning, you're getting ready to close in on a real estate deal, or you're about to welcome a new addition through adoption into your family, or you're facing criminal charges, you need very experienced attorneys, and that is what the Drake Williams Law Firm will be able to do for you in navigating the legal system. The door to their cozy office in historic downtown Ponchatoula has been open since 1981. They have helped thousands and thousands of Louisiana families and individuals win cases, close on real estate deals, and regain that peace of mind. Their lawyers over at the Drake Williams Law Firm, Ernie Drake III, Ryan J. Williams, and Summer Vignair, are very determined, compassionate, and dedicated to their craft. It's the Drake Williams Law Firm, drakewilliamslawfirm.com. Give them a call today at 985-386-7600. Tell them your good friend Blake Ruffino with AYS sent you on by.
All right. Got a little bit of sourcing here from, or not sourcing, got a little breaking news here from our guy Wilson Alexander from The Advocate. Wilson Alexander is reporting that he obtained the contract from Blake Baker, which I will say this, 100% know that Wilson has the contract. He confirmed last night about the 3-year, $2.5 million. But LSU also covered a $950,000 buyout to Missouri. I would assume, I've not read Wilson's article, I would assume that was because instead of the $2 million that they would do, the $950,000 had not, the contract had not been approved by their board of supervisors. If I would, or board of regents, whatever they call it at Mizzou. Guys, buying out a contract $1 million for a guy who did what he did last year at Missouri is not a lot of money. I mean, it's not. I'm just telling you the truth. So Blake Baker returns. Okay. Let me take a sip of this. A sip of this water. I was thinking about those Marbell Reds or whatever you call them, the Marbello Reds. Let's talk a little bit of staff. All right. So one thing. Let's go along the defensive line very quickly, because I do think that it has been reported that Bo Davis, the Texas defensive line coach, is expected to be retained and stay at the University of Texas. On Thursday, I said on this show, do I think that LSU is trying to go after Bo Davis to be their next, at least, interior defensive line coach? Yes, I do. But I do not know, or I did not know, how much sense it made for him unless he wanted to come home, which is a very big thing. His son does play at Southeastern. I was asked not to share that. Now, some of you that have never watched the show, I'm a graduate of Southeastern. You know, regardless if they love me or hate me over there, I was asked not to share that his son was there. I did not until yesterday. Somebody tagged us in it on Twitter. Really wish that wouldn't have happened, but it did. Do I think that LSU is going to continue until it's finalized to go after Bo Davis? Yes. Do I think it makes a lot of sense for him? No, I do not. Because they are paying him over $1 million, or going to be paying him over $1 million to be, and he will be the highest paid position coach in the country. I think that for what it's worth, more than any position group at Texas, the defensive line they have a very well orchestrated thing with the way that they do an NIL along their defensive line. So no, I do not know how much sense it makes for him to come back from a professional level. But here's what you don't know, that I think it's somewhat out there. We've been asked the question a lot. We have avoided the question. I do think that LSU is going to make a hire in this offseason, which technically, guys, it is the offseason for you. I think they make a hire this offseason to bring somebody in that starts better organizing and orchestrating NIL for LSU. I also believe that if that, that has been a major talking point around the Bo Davis thing about why, hey, man, this has got to change for you guys. Now, this is how I believe a conversation went down with Bo Davis. And no, I'm not really guessing. I think Bo Davis wants to be closer to home. I think he wouldn't mind being back at a place that he played at, he's from. I do think that some of the concerns that he had were about how they are organized on doing things. With that being said, I think that his worry was counteracted with, okay, we are taking care of that. We have taken care of that, or it will be taken care of. I will be interested to see what today brings. It would not shock me if Bo Davis signs an extension with Texas. It also would not surprise me if Scott Woodward comes down goes over to Texas, kicks the damn door down, and says, "I'm not taking no for an answer," because he literally continues to do it. With all of that being said, would I love Bo Davis as the next defensive line coach here? 100%. I do not know personally. I just don't know how that's going to end. I do think that other defensive line coaches have made it very well, interior guys, I think that they've made it very well known that they would love to come here. I think Carl Dunbar is somebody that you look at and kick the tires on and ask, what is the relative nature that you would want to come to LSU? I also ask myself the question, is there guys that have coached with Frank? And does Blake Baker have any suggestions on who he would want for the interior? Now, here's what I'll tell you too. I do not know if John Jancic, who was retained by Brian Kelly, will coach the defensive line. Do I think that there's a chance that he stays at the position that he's known for or moves back to the position that he's known for with edge rush? I think that is a potential. But I have heard, not confirmed, I have heard, may not be true, that Kevin Peoples, the defensive end coach and technically outside linebackers coach, would make some sense. Who's currently at Missouri, was at Missouri with Blake Baker, would make a lot of sense there. I think that there's going to be constant conversations throughout today and tomorrow about what their plan is. And I know that they had them yesterday about what their plan is along the defensive line. At linebacker, I would not be shocked, obviously, if Blake Baker was a linebackers coach. I also would not be shocked if he goes to safeties and you don't have to hire a safeties coach, okay? And a guy like Bob Diaco gets elevated into coaching inside backers. There's a reason that Brian Kelly did not let those two guys go. That would not shock me. Now, is any of that final? No. What I will tell you is late last night, I received a phone call because a lot of you, or I made a phone call and I had a conversation. I don't know if Jamar Cain has been reached out to yet. Do I think that Jamar Cain would want to come back? Yes, I do. Actually, I know for a fact that Jamar Cain would want to come back from the sourcing that I hear. Deep sourcing. Do I think he's coming back? I do not know yet. I think he would be on a list. I don't know how much sense it makes because of the fact that possibly Kevin Peoples would be involved in what Blake Baker would want. But he is an option. Corners. Well, I mean, it's been the worst kept secret in Baton Rouge over the last month about Corey Raymond. It would not, it would not shock me this week if Corey Raymond, it was announced that he was your corners coach. I have religiously on this show said that I do think that there's question marks there. I think that there's question marks in reference to what has happened in the secondary with Corey Raymond over the last 4 years. I think that he can, and I do think that he can recruit at a high level. So let me say this. I think that there is one thing that Corey Raymond has continuously done wherever he's gone. He has recruited at a high level. But even though he's recruited at a high level, it has not necessarily been completely beneficial in what has happened on the field. Guys, they are 97th in the 97th in the country, or Corey Raymond is 97th. I'm reading this right here. 97th in the country when it comes to passing yards allowed from his position group. 97th. So out of 130 teams, guys, he's closer to being one of the worst than being one of the best. Now, I do I think that Corey could come back and revamp himself and DBU? I do. But I do think if we are being real with everyone, if we're just calling it like we see it, you got to see him revamp himself and revamp this corner room. Now, here's what you're going to hear, okay, from everybody who knows Corey. Well, look what he did in 2012, 2013, 2014, 2015, 2016. Okay, that's fair. Will not argue that whatsoever. But if this were anybody else in the country, like, let me give you an example. If I told you that a former corners or DBs coach at Alabama was 97th in the country in passing yards allowed in the last 4 years, would you want him? I have taken a lot of heat off of that. What some of you are not hearing is that would I mind Corey Raymond being a corners coach here? Hell no, would not mind it. I also would say that he's got to show that things have changed with him in the last 4 years. I don't think that Corey would tell you that that is unfair. That's not an unfair take. And then you got people in the media, well, this is the list of the guys that he has. Guys, those lists don't matter when you look at the last 4 years that he's had. You can say, well, he was on really bad teams. Guys, a lot of people are on really bad teams. You know what else? Let me tell you something else. In the last 2 years, technically, Robert Steeples has a better average of passing yards allowed than Corey does. Would you rather Robert Steeples? Because recruiting is just one thing. Recruiting and getting guys here are just one thing. When Corey left, there was a lot of toxicity coming from the DB room, and that you have not been able to rebuild. You haven't been able to rebuild it yet. In 2022, you got bailed out. Here's the truth. In 2022, you got bailed out by the following players: Jared Bernard Converse, Mekhi Gardner. Probably this kid is, well, I'm not going to say he was my favorite, but he was my favorite. Jay Ward, Joe Fouché, and yes, I'm going to say him, Major Burns. You had 5 seniors in your DB room. That is what bailed you out in 2022. It wasn't the recruiting that you brought in. Now, in the world of the transfer portal and NIL, and corner being arguably the biggest position where guys go into the portal, no. Bringing guys in from high school is not the end-all be-all. It just isn't. Because the reality is, as soon as they come in, the sooner they will leave if they're not playing. That is how around the country that position has been going. Let me tell you of teams that are facing those exact problems. Are you ready? These are the teams that have had the most DBs in the portal. Oh, wrong side. Here we go. You ready? Let's not even go around the country just yet. Georgia. Let's go around the SEC. Georgia, Alabama, USC. Those are your top 3. They recruit the high school ranks better than anybody. Want to know number 4? Ohio State. Are there worries there? Yes, there are worries. But don't listen to what I say. You got to hear, or don't hear what I'm saying. Listen to what I'm saying. Almost got that one wrong. So, when it's all said and done, and if Corey's the guy, join arms with me in celebration that he's coming back. But also know that there are question marks that I personally have. I will end this in saying the only thing that I want, the only thing that I personally want is for him to revamp himself as one of the best corner coaches in the country. The only thing that I want is for LSU and DBU to get back. I am also old enough to remember that every single year, Corey Raymond would hold LSU hostage for more money. He wants to be a DC. Well, you're going to have to go to a lower level to be a DC. And he does not want to do that. That's what everybody does coming up. Everybody does. So, I've said this exact same thing a month ago, and I will end it with that. I'm old enough to remember, like clockwork, the Football Scoop article that would continue to come out that Corey Raymond's getting pursued by Alabama and other SEC schools. Okay. C. King says, if Corey is the guy, it means Kelly wanted him to be the guy. That's true. doesn't change the fact, doesn't change the fact that those question marks remain. Okay. What else do we got on the ledger? Honkus says, is Austin Thomas coming home? I would not be shocked if a conversation had been made or had been had. Yeah, would not be shocked. Does that mean that it happens? We shall see. Okay. You know what else we got to talk about? That's not a no. C King, he says, yeah, I agree. There are definitely questions dealing with court. No question, my man. Show Nuff says, who gives a F about Austin Thomas? He's been here 38 times and stunk it up. Well, let me tell you something about Austin Thomas that you might not have known. Okay. Who do you think's helping run their NIL and organize it? What have they just done in the portal? I'm going to leave it there. Ole Miss. I don't know what this means, but it's probably accurate. Blake Ruffino is about the most nimble-looking mofo I know. He should be. I'm not a nimble mofo. I do have very quick feet for my size. Some have called me the fat cat. Pause. Move on. Let's end it with this too. As everybody, before we get out of here, hits the like and share. Somebody call me Garfield. Fat cat. Men don't get around people with fat or men don't get around the opposite sex if their nickname's Fat Cat. All right, let's end it with this. Why the fuck did I do that? All right. All right. By the way, I do like lasagna. By the way, yesterday it was reported. Let's end it here. Yesterday it was reported. Actually, something that we literally had talked about 2 weeks ago. But here it is. I'm sure a lot of you remember the Sharon Lewis case. Obviously, a couple weeks ago, they were in the federal court hearing. It got thrown out in the state level and then came back in the federal level. It was determined yesterday that Sharon Lewis's lawsuit was so baseless that not only did the case get thrown out and tossed in the state and federal level, it legitimately was so bad that now she has to pay in the lawsuit. Now she has to pay in the lawsuit for the Les Miles case. I will say this. Since this case was brought to our attentions in 2020, I have said the same thing over and over and over again. Do I think that we have to all stand together when it comes to sexual harassment and things that get covered up? No doubt. I took criticism by people of specific political ideologies in reference to my opinion on Sharon Lewis. I think you know what I am talking about. But Sharon Lewis, when she came with the case in 2020, I literally said and begged for everybody to let due process play out. I had guys like Glenn Guilbeau on the show and confronted people from the USA Today that there was audio that was released that Sharon Lewis had orchestrated a deal with a lady named Gloria Scott, who said and alleged that Darius Geis sexually, did things to her. There was an audio that was released that Gloria Scott said that she had spoke with Sharon Lewis, and after discussions with Sharon Lewis, she wants her money about the Darius Geis situation and tried to extort LSU. It was released in court, that exact audio that I told you was coming, that would be released, that Sharon Lewis was not only a part of that, but orchestrated it, that she had been trying to extort LSU even before the lawsuit came. It was also in a text message that was released that she was making very vulgar statements about current colleagues at LSU because of the, I'm not even going to go there, but everything that she alleged, she had also helped orchestrate. When something in state and federal court is found baseless and you have to pay for the ramifications of the lawsuit that you came out with, because she's having to pay for attorney fees for LSU, attorney fees for Les Miles. I've been hearing that there are some individuals that's going to countersue her now for defamation. The USA Today and some individuals at The Advocate should have to, and especially Glenn Guilbeau, should have to release a statement of retraction on the stories that they've given for the baseless and just bad facts that they have. All in all in this, Glenn Guilbeau ran with a story that was so stupid, and him wanting it to be true, that he did not do his due diligence in seeing if it actually happened. Guys, she did not put Frank Wilson into her lawsuit until after he was then rehired by Brian Kelly. All of a sudden, when Frank Wilson was hired back at LSU, all of a sudden she just remembered all the sexual things that he did. But guys, I am telling you that there are going to be things that are released on Sharon Lewis and things that she did that I don't know if criminal charges on her don't need to be brought. As some have said, on Twitter this week when it relates to LSU. It's funny when the rabbit's got the gun in it. You better load that son of a bitch, because if you don't and it backfires on you. But since 2020, guys, it's 2024. For 4 years on this show, we have been screaming from the rooftops that this was bullshit. Today, it's over. The four things that I was, or three, at least three things that I was labeled during all of this was a right winger. I was labeled a piece of shit and a non-progressive, or whatever they called me. There is one DM that I would like to read to you. You are a typical white male piece of shit. This was from 2021. No, what I am is just a real son of a bitch. And I'm going to tell you like it is. Sharon Lewis should be ashamed of herself. She should be ashamed of herself. All right, that's all I got. 4:30. Be ready. Gonna be a good week. We'll see y'all soon, man. Peace.